All right, guys. Yeah, let's breathe in. Let's do like 10 breaths. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. In. Out. In. Out. You can close your eyes if you wish. In. Out. In. Out. In. Out. In. Two more. Out. In. Hold at the top. Out. How do you feel? All right. Cool. So hopefully the talk will be at least as effective. So wow, it has been one hell of a journey to get here, to be here with all of you in London. I normally live in Austin, Texas, and yeah, things weren't always as clear as they are now, for sure. So at any point, if I seem like I have a bunch of answers, just know it's because at some point I really didn't. So my path for me started off, I'll tell you a bit about that so that we kind of understand the holistic view of this. And then I'll try to get through in time for some questions. So if you think of anything, just save it for later. I love the Q&A. I'd rather just do Q&A any day. But so I was in undergrad in chemical engineering, and I was really starting to struggle with my short-term memory. So I was in this place where my memory had been just phenomenal and taken for granted in a bunch of different ways. And then probably like a lot of you, I started to have some issues, and I started to go, oh, okay, apparently aging or health-related issues aren't for just only for other people. Ta-da, So around that time, though, I'd been an athlete. I'd wrestled at a high level and done other sports too, but particularly with wrestling, you can't just eat whatever you want to eat. You have to be conscious of, well, how's this going to make me feel? So even at like 8 or 9, I was thinking, oh, well, apparently the candy bar doesn't work so well for practice if practice is several hours long. So I started to get informed by that, and I was born to much older parents. That's particularly in the 80s. My mom and dad were 43 and 42. So as I was starting to have these issues, and I was worried, it was like, wow, I don't know if I'll make it through the rest of school with this, like staying the way this is. And so I was really starting to search for answers, because I was thinking, well, I already am fit, I eat a really good diet, and I'm young enough, so if I'm having gut health issues, and this was 12 years ago, and I was reading, even then I was not eating gluten, I was cutting out dairy, I was like removing a lot of toxic triggers, cleaning the house, no chemicals, and thinking, wow, if I've done all this, I'm not sure like what else we're going to have. So I was having just debilitating levels of brain fog, and thinking, not only do I need to find a solution, but it seems to be getting harder by the week to find one. So in light of Mother's Day being recent, I'll put this up. These are my parents in the 60s, and my mom was someone that I was always so close with. Both my parents were, they sort of raised me like a peer, and because we grew up, somewhere pretty remote, we're also my best friends. So if you've ever sort of struggled to keep someone that you love alive, and then watched everyone fail, including you, you know that can be just a hell of a motivating force, And one of the things that we found with her, and for me, and then my girlfriend at the time and her dad, was that we all did one of these tests that I'll get to in a moment, and I tried a bunch of other tests already, and I felt like the results weren't very actionable. So I remember thinking, well, okay, so what do I do now? But luckily, we got to this point where I had done a hair analysis, and key for me, luckily, because there's a lot of ones that aren't like this. I had a great consultation with someone that's now retired, and he was just a absolute genius in this area. And I learned everything I could from him, and I read everything available. And yeah, I mean, with her, it was quickly downhill. As medication, more surgery, more medication, and I just realized, like, wow, things really are reversible from having gotten a minor in chemistry and math and spend a lot of time with things like thermodynamics and understanding absorption. I understood pretty quickly in all of those four people, myself, my mother, my girlfriend, her dad, we were all deficient in things we were already supplementing. And I thought, well, this is a problem. Because I already knew it wasn't about quality. And I think a lot of us have the vocabulary of like quality. Yes, I want to pursue quality. And I think now in 2022, like 12 years later, and the phone agrees, is that quality should be expected. But beyond that, we need things to be really effective. We need absorption. So every mineral supplement I've ever tested is either about 25 to 30% or less absorption. And that's not enough to replenish the deficiencies, it turns out. And yeah, so unfortunately, there's been a lot of people, including her, that didn't, weren't, wasn't able to help in time, but it was just this motivating force of, I can be at peace with her passing, but what do we do now? What do we do differently? It's like, it's always okay to make a mistake, but it's not okay to continue making the same mistake. So a lot of research, and before I even started the company, which exists today as Upgraded Formulas, but I hit upon the hair testing, and it really was eye-opening. And of all the tests that I've ever done and learned, I've got more insight even to this day from this test. But it did, as I said, it left me wondering, if you're deficient in things that you've been taking for a year and a half, 6 days a week, good doses, different brands, different forms, which I'll get to in a moment, very important. Everything you've been taught about forms, at least with our process, no longer matters. Congratulations, you don't have to remember that this form is good for that thing, because when you eat, let's say, magnesium from a certain food, your body doesn't go, sorry, Brad, can't send it to your heart or your brain because it doesn't do this thing. It's like, no, it just gets utilized. Body's smart like that. But when we have gut dysfunction, low stomach acid, anything, then we don't get the nutrients from the food that we should get, which is ultra important, I would say, right? But as we all know, we can eat a lot of these foods. In fact, I had the good fortune of being at the speaker's dinner, and the food was, I feel like, perfect in so many ways. And yet it's still, there would still be gaps in that. There would still be things that were missing. It wouldn't be enough to be optimal. So in my mind, you'd have to understand what you're missing, and then you'd have to be able to target and supplement those specific areas. So this is where I use my background as a biochemist now. So a combination of being a chemical engineer and a nutritionist. And instead of solving these problems for like major corporations, which I had no interest in, I wanted to take all that passion and drive it into this area. So something I realized was, if we could get particle size small enough, then we could through the actual process, then we could have a totally different outcome, which would mean that you could not only identify your deficiencies, but you could actually reverse them. And the good news, and I think this is one of the most hope-inspiring things that I say, is that when we can reverse deficiencies, we can just eliminate disease, quite literally. Every disease we've ever seen has 1, 2, 10 deficiencies. It's right there, right there in front of us. And it's because at the most base level, the mitochondria and any of your favorite organs aren't functioning well. And why aren't they functioning well? Well, they don't have the raw materials. Well, what do you think they do when they don't have the raw materials? They malfunction, And we see that, if you chunk up, it's like how the city works or doesn't work when a train doesn't run on time. It's like you don't have one problem. You have 100 problems when that one train doesn't work. So that's why the first product I put out was a magnesium product that we'll have a sleep study on probably in a month or so with 212 doctors using the Oura Ring and tracking their deep sleep, which is, to me, the lead domino. And we've already seen incredible results. We've seen people double their deep sleep, and they're already at like an hour. And we've seen them go to 2 hours. We've seen people go from 15 minutes of deep sleep to an hour and 51 minutes in 5 days, without even going through our full process, just with that one supplement. So, and then side note, just a brief story. Tim Gray, I know a few of you know him personally. He's become a really good friend. He said, in London Speak, he said, "Mate, I've got to get you over here because I've been taking your manganese," and this is one thing, so not magnesium, but manganese, and both for me and for my mom, we've raised our core body temp, and I've struggled with that my whole life. And I just thought, well, when someone talks about manganese, they know quite a bit more than the average bear, and so I was impressed by a bunch of different levels. It's one of our first conversations. And then later on, he told me that he was going for magnesium IVs twice a week here in London, and that a year and a half later, he hasn't done even one of those. So, and it's just been, supplementing our product. He likes our capsules, whether it's our capsules or our liquid. You can experiment and find the right dose, or you can test. So all of that leaves us, I think, this is pretty clear why, if the body is electric and our electricity capacity or ability to make electricity is really low because the elements either aren't there in a couple different things. If they aren't there in large supply, that's one that we obviously think of, right? But through testing, so that'll cause this issue. Or so the midday slump, the morning slump, the evening slump, the morning slump or midday slump, and then the evening, oh my God, I'm full of energy, sort of reverse pathway. That happens. But then what about when you have high levels of, say, calcium, and then you have low levels of magnesium, potassium, sodium, things like that? You have low levels of manganese, you have low levels of chromium, all these things. You can actually be making your health worse. I wish I had more time. I wish I could slow it down, do an hour, and talk about why, for example, vitamin D is, especially at high doses, might be making your health worse. How that's possible. We can talk about that in Q&A, but briefly, magnesium. Actually, let's talk about that. I think it's so important, particularly for a population here. If you're here in London, you don't get much sunlight, so red light's an option, things like that. But what do you need to be aware of? Well, you need to be aware of the fact that vitamin D causes calcium to overabsorb or increase absorption. The fact is that you get calcium more easily, more readily than almost any other nutrient out there. So the whole, I just call it the calcium myth that we were, told about. Oh, you need it for bone health. It's just not true. In fact, it's going to lead to heel spurs and things like that. Some of the issues my mother had as well, I got to see firsthand. It's like, why are you so stiff in your joints? Why are you having, flexibility issues? Why are you're just not as limber? And that's calcium deposition. Hey, and we're paying to do that through vitamin D supplementation. Doesn't that feel good? No. So and then there's other elements that you need too, right? So you need boron to activate vitamin D. We have a boron supplement now that I've put out because I think it's one of the things I like so much, along with iodine, some of the ones that aren't talked about as much, that I feel like are so incredibly important, and I see so many people be deficient in. Boron, PS, is just synonymous with intelligence, and some even say psychic transmission, things like that, which I believe we all have, particularly if we have enough electricity in the body, we can connect if we really tune in. So I think it's clear right now that even if you're getting a lot of certain nutrients from one food, you may not be absorbing it thanks to stomach acid and gut dysfunction, all these things, which was why I thought, we have to have a way to get these, in my mind, the most foundational and most important nutrients in our entire solar system, and certainly on the planet, the building blocks of literally everything. That periodic table, should have a slide just of the periodic table. We all know what that looks like, right? Some of us loved it, some of us were scared by it, I'm sure. And but regardless how you felt about it, there's no arguing, that it's inarguable. It's that collection of elements is the building block of everything in this room, all of us, all the chairs, everything, the lighting that we don't love, every aspect, the things that we do love. So when I think based on that, it's a great thing to do to test for all those elements in relationship to each other. So one of the things that I talk about is why hair, when interpreted well and analyzed well by a lab that does this well, is so valuable and much more valuable than blood, for a couple of reasons. A, blood is us on our best behavior. That's something I say in the book that I'm writing now that should be out later this year. Blood is us on our best behavior. And I've seen deficiencies in blood that we could have seen 10 years sooner in hair, frankly. Because hair is tissue, just like skin is tissue. And when we realize that, our whole mind sort of opens up and we go, okay, that does make a lot of sense, even though I've been told sort of the opposite our whole life. So there's that. And then with hair, what else is important to understand? Well, I think it's the ratio, for example, the ratio between these elements, right? So when you see everything taken on one sample, with hair, you get 1,000 times more data per nutrient sampled than with blood. 1,000 times. It's not close. Blood is also you on that day. We all know that. But it's also pulling from, let's say you went out drinking last night. I know Londoners love to drink, even the biohackers, and zero judgment. But the result is that your blood pH changes, right? I think we're all familiar with that. And then what else happens? Well, gloriously, our body is so smart that our blood is so important. It's our life force, right? That it will actually pull from our bone marrow. Hello, osteoporosis. You're all free from that. Osteopenia, all those things later in life. And it'll pull those nice alkalizing minerals into our blood. And now our blood's happy again. It's around that 7.36 pH that our body loves, Yay. In the process, or from our tissues and our organs and lovely things like that. So we're like, I don't feel so bad. I guess I can just continue on, drinking and being, merry that way. So it's something to think about for sure. So actively, since we've all been sitting for 20 minutes, I'd love for us to just stand if you can relate to any one of these in the last month, let's say. I just want to kind of I'm going to guess like 80% or 90%. And this is just like the ones I rattled off like on a slide, yesterday in 10 minutes. So I would say all of us, whether we're aware or not that aware, can relate to all of these, which are elemental causes. So, yeah, some of my favorites, but yeah. Anyway, okay, you can all sit. Thank you. So all of us, we're united, and then this is part of the human struggle, and we wonder. So I'm always seeking clarity, and I'm always seeking to be able to have enough energy to work and be just ultra creative throughout the day, really innovate, and then also enjoy the dance party at night. And sleep well, sleep super deeply, recover well. Transfer all the memories and the learnings through REM to the next day, and be able to really actualize and hopefully make not only my life great, but a lot of other people's in the process. And I think everyone here, that's why I love this conference so much, and it was worth that long ass plane ride to get here. And I was previously, side note, I was in Brazil and I was loving it. I was like, I've got to get back so I can get to London. So hopefully this talk has been helpful, because there was some effort put in for sure. Let's briefly talk about hormones from a mineral standpoint. So if I called on you by a show of hands, who confidently feels like they could talk about the building blocks of hormones? The building blocks of hormones. Yeah. Okay. No, this is such a key thing. It's why I've researched so much, and we've done so much work in the lab. I'm writing about it, and there's a couple different things. So the interesting thing is that these two are like masculine and feminine, really. So copper is very it's creative. It's a creative element. You have a lot of it, it's good. You have none of it, it's bad. You have too much of it, it's also bad. Zinc, masculine. Iron is also masculine. It's kind of like archaic. So people that eat too much iron-containing foods, hello carnivore diet, often are like highly assertive in a way that at some point is just like going to get on your nerves. And don't get me wrong, I think all diets fail, hello, for sure, eventually. But all diets can be good for some stretch of time as well. So I'm not by no means picking on that. I've done a week straight of carnivore. I've also done 11 days of no food. There's a reason and a time for a lot of different things to reset. P.S. During that time, I felt awesome. Got a month's worth of work done in those 11 days of no food, and it was just minerals and water, and little bits of black coffee. So, and dropped a bunch of fat, reset my hormones. It's felt incredible, and I've honestly sort of stayed in that progression. That was a year and a half ago. And it was specifically to heal injury. I'd partially pulled a hamstring sprinting. So, zinc and copper from a hormone standpoint, to go back to the hormones, it's interesting because zinc is, I think some of us know, is related to testosterone, which is key for both men and women, right? So women have many times more testosterone than they have estrogen in their body. Also, not relatively known by a lot of people. Hello, important to know. So it's important for all of us. Hence like microplastics and things like that we're drinking that bioaccumulate. But certainly also these are great because, and we test for these in hair, they're great because they push out heavy metals, which I know plastics are, thought about a lot. But as Dom said yesterday in his talk, mercury is far and away the most toxic thing that we can find in our bodies. On a given day of the week that's not radioactive, at least. Certain elements push out other elements, right, over time. And for my money, chelation, my money, my time, anything, actually, all of that off the table. I don't like chelation therapy at all. I think it has a lot of issues with it. That's just a PS that I don't have time to really get into. But naturally over time, the body if you can be patient enough, the body will move at a period of reducing toxicity. We don't get sick all at once, and we don't get well all at once. And and something I've learned through different plant medicines like ayahuasca is that we really get in trouble when we fight things, when we resist, when we go, I want it right now, or I'm clinging on to this outcome. It doesn't work so well. And when it comes to removing heavy metals, minerals, binders, things like that, but chelation, forcing it out, not so much, even if you're, quote, remineralizing the body while you're doing it. So zinc, testosterone, progesterone, copper, estrogen, and guaranteed that your hormones will never be optimal if your minerals are not optimal. So therefore, your neurotransmitters won't be, mood won't be, hence this previous slide with mood shifts and among many other things like sleep. So this is the future that I think we all want, that we're all looking for. I just love the slides. I just wanted to put it in. I think it's beautiful, frankly. But this is what I want for all of us, And I've seen it firsthand. When the old die young, like, we don't get this beautiful future because so much wisdom is lost. So much wisdom is lost. And when we give birth to little ones and their IQ is up to 20 points lower because they had iodine deficiency, or their mother had iodine deficiency, which is a thing. That's, believe it or not, that's from a study as well. P.S. on iodine. Out of 6,000 people tested, 96% were deficient, some of which were already taking iodine, which tells me a couple things. One, that we're not taking nearly enough iodine. We're not absorbing it well, that we all need more of it, which you'll see that not only do we have a aggressively high dose iodine, but or obviously it's absorbed well, but it's aggressively high dose too. But yet still about 50% of what Japan eats on a daily basis. So all right, so I've got 10 minutes left. Between these two slides, I think what I really want to leave you guys with is, before we do Q&A, if you have any questions, is just this idea that we're all elemental, and to the extent that we ignore that we're elemental, that we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, but what does that really mean? We're a collection of the elements, and that while we're here in this body, we're going to be governed by the laws of those elements, right? As far as I can foresee it. So, in that way, we're, as Carl Sagan said, we're one way the universe intimately knows itself, which I think is really cool. So, hope that was helpful. Another thing that I'm really passionate about is, so we're all about root causes. And one of the root causes that I see out there in suffering and also disease is clean water. So I know we all probably have our favorite charities. All of our products are water-based. And I think about it all the time as I look at my ultra purified water with all the minerals, and I think, what is it like to walk 6 miles each day for water and then walk back and then not be in school because of it and suffer a lot of just unimaginable things in the process because of it. So this charity and a few others do a great job of providing clean water, which I really, really love. I think it's a root cause, right? Because we don't care much about education or cell phones or even sanitation until we have clean water. And there's just a heartbreaking story of a young girl who committed suicide because she's walking back with a bucket. She slips, she falls, the bucket breaks, she commits suicide. She couldn't bear the shame of going back to see her parents and her whole family with no water. I think this is happening every day to the bottom 700 million or so people. So that's something that I plan to continue to work on and help with really throughout my life. So yeah, that's what I've got for you guys. Thank you so much for coming. Yeah.
This is just a kind of like a practitioner type of question, but usually I have patients that come in with, because I do remember I was telling you I have like a little symptom checklist for minerals, but I do love the hair testing that you're doing too.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I'll see low deficiency in iodine almost all the time. And I won't give them iodine right away because I have to check. I've been trained to check for autoimmunity. So because apparently if you have different antibodies that are really high, like different thyroid antibodies, for instance, you can't give iodine because it would be bad. So what are your thoughts on that? Because you did say take iodine. I feel like I should be on iodine too, but without testing.
Yeah.
Do you give it to everybody?
So that is a great question, and my answer has always been, and I've talked to a lot of people, I know there's some division on this. My answer has always been knowing that, going back to the fundamentals, as like Elon would say, like thinking in first principles. So, or thinking just at a base level of like math, the chemistry, the science. What we know is that you can't make thyroid hormone without certain minerals. We have something called peak thyroid that like anyone can take. It's a sort of balanced approach if you're not testing, although everyone should be. And it has iodine, it has zinc, it has copper, it has selenium. There's other things that are important, manganese, magnesium. Hence that like core body temp that Tim and his mom were experiencing an improvement in. And so with iodine being one of the, I would say probably the most important element for thyroid hormone production, you need some of it every day of your life, is my perspective. Because I mean, why we have thyroid antibodies, I believe, is as much emotional and trauma related, hands down. And iodine is both it does so many other things. It's thank you. It's antibacterial. It's antiviral, which I was like trying to scream about the past couple of years. Antiviral. Germ-X is not antiviral. Iodine is antiviral. Zinc's antiviral. It's funny. Amazon took some of our listings down thanks to them being actually antiviral. Didn't know what to think of that, but anyway, next question.
So my question is on trauma. So one of the things that I notice is with a lot of people that have HPA dysregulation, a lot of them, it's psychosomatic, so it's not necessarily just physical trauma. So I have a traumatic brain injury, but I also had a pituitary tumor. And this is also going to tie into your question as well, because I have an autoimmune condition as well, and I had Lyme disease. Yeah. And when I would take iodine, like it just felt like I was on fire. So my question is specifically for trauma, because when I started doing IVs and having injections of vitamin D, I actually developed cystic acne and threw off my period for about 6 months, and it took me twice as long to
threw off your period. Were your periods much more painful too?
Yeah.
Okay, so this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. This is great for all of us. Is that what happened with vitamin D? There is that calcium went up. Calcium and magnesium balance each other. So when your calcium shoots up, your magnesium will come down. And magnesium helps the muscles relax. We think with cramps, most of us have been taught like potassium. Magnesium helps the muscles relax. And so periods should never be painful, ever. That's just a warning sign, just like a headache, really. So that's a great question. If you had been supplementing magnesium, then that would have been really the key thing, if you were absorbing a lot of it, which again goes back to everything that I think about all the time and have for years. Yep. Thank you.
Could you explain a little bit how your minerals enter the cell?
Yeah, sure. So just the...
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was wondering if it's an active or passive diffusion.
Yeah, sort of both. You could say passive, but it's through electron transport. So having electron driving force into the cell, and having the particle size be, so the normal size, if this is a blood cell, so let's say this is 10,000 nanometers in size, the minerals you're trying to absorb are 5 to 8 times this size, 50 to 80,000 nanometers. So the size of like this whole panel over here. And so that math doesn't work, right? We have to break it down in our digestive system. So we need stomach acid for that. We need a lot of things to work well to go from there to there. So what we did through our process, what I figured out was, well, what if we get them so that we can put 1,000 little microparticles or so in one of these, and that's the process. That's what we do, and then the testing is in part to show you before and after where your results were and how you like where you are and what to do about it. It's also to show you the efficacy of the products, that they work, and you get to see their deficiencies, vanish over time. So, yeah. Sure, thanks.
Sorry. I was wondering if you could speak to, you mentioned that the meal was excellent, but that it wasn't mineral rich enough, or, that you still thought there were holes. Mm-hmm. Do you think it's possible to have, and why? So since 1940, a conservative statistic, I've seen some that are like far worse than this, but since 1940, so in our like parents' lives, my dad was born in 44, so 1940 to now, we've seen something like 40% less nutrients is the stat in our food across the board, and that's, I know the United Nations they've listed stats that are at that or below that. If this is all your topsoil, and then now you're 40% reduced, then you have a lot less nutrients across the board. So when you're eating that just results in this, whether it's steak, whether it's salad, whether it's salmon, whatever it is, of course there's more, not only that, of course there's less nutrients, but there's also more environmental toxins at this point in the world than there's ever been. There's some stat that I don't know how they got to this, but they said roughly 1,000 times more toxic, both water and air, than any other time in nature. So we need to, what minerals do is they provide an electrostatic shield, sort of like the movie 300 where they go shields up. That's what's happening in the body. And as simplistic as that is, it really is what's happening, because, and this is key, this was a light bulb moment for me about 10 years ago, is when I realized that when you have less mineral deficiencies, you have a lower propensity to attract heavy metal toxicity. So I'll say that one more time. More minerals, less like gaps from diet. You're plugging the gaps at all diets. That's what I mean when I say all diets fail. Now your heavy metals electrostatically will not stay in the body as easily, which is like magnificent to think about, because it's the hardest thing to remove. So, sure.
So you mentioned vitamin D.
Yeah.
And in the UK especially, I think probably since the pandemic as well, probably all over the UK, the government was giving out vitamin D to people, and obviously vitamin D, and there's been loads of studies on that and COVID and all the other, benefits that it could have. But then obviously the ideal situation is everyone can test, everyone can have the information to balance things out. As you said, the depletion of, and calcium, essentially,
magnesium,
the issues with that.
Right.
But obviously that's to some degree idealistic to say that from the whole country, let's say in the UK, how can we say to people, because some people will benefit from vitamin D. How can we do that more safely?
Yeah, just always take magnesium when you take vitamin D.
Just those two.
And boron and K2. Yeah, I would do those for sure. We'll put out a product soon. It's in R&D that will make it easier for people. But yeah. I mean, it's a great point. Zinc and copper too. One of the things I wanted to mention was when I was in my mid-20s, I was struggling with the brain fog. You know, I was in love with and dating this just, you know, a beautiful girlfriend, and at some point I had no real sex drive, which luckily isn't the case now. But wow, I was thinking this is quite a problem, and that was from the heavy metal toxicity that happened in part through low zinc not being there, through depletion. So that's something to think about too, is like, what are you losing, particularly as men, when you're having sex, or ejaculating. So that's a whole nother like talk, but something to think about.
Last question.
Yeah, last question.
Hi. Is there anywhere in the UK you could recommend for hair analysis?
Yeah. Well, we don't have our normal full like big booth like we normally have in the US, but we have Functional Self down here that's distributing our products. So they're distributing us and Bulletproof and a couple other brands. And so you can get it through them, and then harass them if there's a product on our site that they don't have, so they'll carry it. Yeah. But yeah, you can do it then, and it's like quick shipping, and at least it ships to you quickly and you get your results. Oh, by the way, we have a stylist taking hair samples today at the booth, so she can do it for you easily. Yeah. Yes, yeah, we've done hair testing on infants, like just old enough to grow hair. Yeah. All throughout the U.S. Yeah, different places. Yeah, only U.S. Yeah.
Last question regarding the minerals. Urine testing. Can you talk about how it compares to hair testing?
Yeah, excretion is just not as accurate, I find. You know, tissue gives you, you want to see it. So hair is a closer approximation, much closer to your actual organs than any excretion process. Other excretion process, and we test for heavy metals too, right? And the cool thing about that is that what we've seen is that through research is that lead, you can have a lead exposure. After 32 days, that acute lead exposure is not evidenced in the blood whatsoever. It's gone. You'll still find it in hair. I think there's still improvements to be made on the heavy metal testing side, to be frank. But yeah, anyway, that's my time. Thank you all. Yeah.